Everyone. This session has a group of gentlemen who've collaborated on a Battle Creek, Michigan project. And I will, we have Bill Shore here, Carl Fetters, Michael McFarland, and Brendan McCran on the panel today. And I'm going to start out reading Brendan's bio. He's on the far end. And then we'll go in the order of your left to right as far as presentations. So, Brendan McCran is an Executive Vice President for Blue Terra Waste Solutions, a Colorado-based company addressing food waste reduction and diversion through education, project planning, and technology solutions. Brendan oversees Blue Terra's National Project Planning and Consulting Division, which transforms organic waste segregated series of liabilities into localized assets like heat, energy, and renewable natural gas. Brendan and his Blue Terra Waste Solutions team are currently designing a highly integrated on-site anaerobic digestion pilot in Boulder County, Colorado, which will be leveraged to inform economically feasible and environmentally effective community-scale waste-to-energy models nationwide. Brendan doesn't have a formal presentation, but he'll be open for questions. So just to let you know that. And I just realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Barb Good with Kansas State Pollution Prevention Institute, and I'll be moderating this session. I didn't put a number by my name. So I will introduce Bill, who will be presenting the first presentation, Bill Shore. Bill spent 15 years in brand management, profitability, managing multiple brands at Stokely Van Camp and Geno's. At the Kellogg Company, he established national distribution with Whitney's Yogurt. He started the W.J. Shore Company in 1987 with a mission of social marketing that is achieving individual and group behavioral change to benefit society and the world at large. I want to encourage you guys to, if you've downloaded the app or get on the website, the bios are much more extensive. These gentlemen are humble and didn't want me to read the whole thing, but they do have very impressive bios, and you can read those on your app or the website. So I will turn it over now to Bill.
Thank you, Art. I'll just need the clicker. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of the experiences that we've gone through. And I want to start out just by thanking Brendan for being here. I know Brendan's going to actually working on a presentation at another session. But a lot of what you're going to see here today was due to Brendan's help and assistance. And I just want to call that out because he did a lot of the heavy lifting on some of the project that we worked on. So I want to publicly thank Brendan and let you know that if you're going to do something like what we were trying to do, call Brendan for help. It's interesting to talk about what I'm going to talk about because I'd like to be able to say I've got this wonderful success story and all you have to do is print out the notes and you can go home and do this yourself. The fact is, food waste is a work in progress pretty much everywhere, and I'm not sure that we necessarily got the solution for you, but I want to share with you some of the experience we've had, and I think that hopefully there'll be some lessons learned that you may be able to take away for your community. I'll tell you the concept. The concept was that we believed that Battle Creek would make a great zero food waste test market. And we're located in south central Michigan, 51,000 population. And, oh boy, clearly I didn't hit the right one. Let's see. All right, why Battle Creek? First of all, we are a food town. Some of you may know that the cereal industry started in Battle Creek with the Kellogg's. But what you may not know is so did all the other cereal companies. At one time, there were 23 cereal companies in Battle Creek. And it is still a very heavily food-oriented town. As a matter of fact, we probably have more food expertise in Battle Creek, Michigan, in a 3-mile radius of downtown than exists anywhere else in the country on a per capita basis. and I'm going to show you some of that in a minute. The other thing is, as a marketing guy, I can tell you what constitutes a great test market. That is, it's small, so therefore it's not too expensive to test something. It's isolated from a media and geographic standpoint, and it's relatively representative of the larger population. And Battle Creek meets all three of those tests. So as a result, we thought it was a good test market. The other thing is, sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. And in our case, we've got a couple of motivating factors and a couple of favorable random occurrences that enabled us to think that we might be able to pull this off. Finally, we had some support for the concept, both politically with Senator Stabenow, who is the Democratic senator from the state of Michigan. She's been very supportive, as has Representative Upton, who is in our district, and he's been very supportive, as well as the Battle Creek Community Foundation. So we've had some good help. Our strategy was that in order to become a zero food waste community, we thought one way to do that would be for us to serve as a test market for the best practices in these things that you all are very familiar with: redistribution, donation, adaptive reuse, and diversion towards most productive waste. And the second thing was that what we were not seeing was the integration of processes and partnerships in other areas, in other communities. We found a huge amount of silo practice. And if you know what I mean by silos, it means everybody's kind of doing their thing by themselves. And nobody's talking to anybody else. And so as a result, we didn't see the kind of integration and leverage that we believed is necessary to build a culture that supports the notion of food waste. And one of the things that's nice about having an independent business, we had a guy here in this last session who has this brewery, and he is very clear that he is driving a culture of value in food waste and the value of recycling and so forth as a single-minded focus. And you can do that when you're running a company. It's hard to do that as a community. Here's the people that are kind of the players. We've got a lot of the right play. We have got a lot of what I would call food waste vectors. First of all, we still have a lot of food production here. Kellogg's Post in Ralston. We also have the International Food Protection Training Institute. We have the W.K. Kellogg Institute for Food Research. We have Covance Laboratories, which is a food packaging laboratory. So we have a ton of food expertise. We also have a major regional food bank. We've got Firekeepers Casino, and you wonder how they're involved, but Mike is going to talk about their involvement and what they're going to contribute. We also have Waste Management, a major player in the food waste stream, and they're important, and I'm going to show you why. Because from a larger Michigan view, we've got a real problem. And the problem is, and this is not new for you, I know, food waste is like 40% of what goes into landfills, which if people understood that, they would just be shocked. But in addition, we're starting to run out of landfill capacity, and it's partly because we have a lot of Canadian trash. The Canadians are bringing their trash over, dumping it in Michigan, and you can thank NAFTA for that. So that's a part of the factoring here, okay? We've got the Canadians filling up our landfill. And then we've got another sort of contributing factor is the sludge from the city. And Carl, our city engineer, but he's Department of Public Works, he's going to talk about how that's impacting this whole thing. And so we've got a lot of factors, and the Michigan Department of Resources is telling us what we can and can't do, which is like putting additional pressure on us to find another solution. So sometimes, the solution ends up being in a lot of problems that are putting pressure on you to do something different. So in a way, all of these, we can thank the Canadians for forcing us to find a better solution than what we're doing. So that's kind of the environment. And so when we came up with the notion of reducing food waste, that seemed to make a lot of sense given the environment that we're dealing with right now. So what we said was, look, within the food waste environment, one of the sort of the metrics you look at is recycling, and we haven't done very well at recycling. Michigan is terrible with recycling. I'll show you more about that in a minute. So, and it's partly because we haven't developed a good recycling culture. In many cases, it's based on the scrap price, and so it seems like the incentives or the motivations to recycle are based on the price of scrap. Now, it seems to me that if I was in government, I would do something to sort of artificially increase the price of scrap so that everybody was motivated to recycle. But I'm not sure that that would work either. Anyway, and then, you have grease recycling, which is kind of a nuisance thing, but it does generate some value for the restaurants. I talked about the notion that programs exist in silos. There's no relative connection, and so restaurants aren't trying to recycle because none of the other restaurants are trying to recycle. I mean, and the one guy who isn't getting benefit or value for that. So there's not a lot of incentive to sort of participate. There's also not much evaluation and not much objective results. There's no research being done in this area to encourage people. There's also mixed messaging on food donation. And I'm really, you get me started on that. That's really a huge issue for me. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, but essentially what it amounts to is that from a communication theory standpoint, it's very problematic to give people two different messages. And I will tell you the two different messages that we've got out there right now is reducing food waste and feeding the hungry. And that's a problem. Because people are going to listen to one message. And right now, reducing food waste is often largely seen as a strategy for feeding the hungry. Well, a strategy is not the same as an objective or a goal. And that's a problem. So I'm just bringing it up. I know people may not be happy. Anyway, our recycling rate sucks. We have like a 20% recycling rate. We're one of the worst in the country. It's horrible. And we have a 10-cent bottle deposit law.
You mean that's not the answer?
Obviously not, or at least it's not for us. So you have people lined up turning their bottles back in, but they still don't recycle. So, clearly we've got a huge problem there, and it demonstrates that we have not built a culture of valuing recycling. So we need to work on that. Here's the messaging thing I talked about, and I'm going to talk about this more when I talk about the marketing piece, but I will tell you it's a problem. And it's not to say that we don't value both of these issues. Both issues are valuable, but you can't combine the messages and expect people to value both. They're not going to get it. I'm just telling you. Consumers are not going to understand what we're doing here. And so this is something we're going to have to fix. So the food waste challenge, as we could see it in the work that we did, was that it's not on anybody's radar screen. Mass feeders are afraid of the risk, so they're not participating. They're staying away from it because they're afraid of lawsuits, even though there's Good Samaritan laws and that isolate them from this. But they don't want to get involved. And the problem with a lot of the industry is that the cost is already absorbed in their P&L, and therefore they see no incentive to working on it. We had the presentation from the other guys in this room before that talked about how much money they could save. But the fact is, for most CEOs, food waste is a very, very small 2 or 3 decimal point to the right factor on their bottom line, and it's simply not worth their time and attention. So they're not paying a lot of attention to it. Food is cheap, landfills are cheap, there's no easy solutions and no motivation to find the solutions, so we've got confused messaging. So, but I also am not real persuaded that education is the issue. As Homer says, just because I don't care doesn't mean I don't understand. And when you talk to people, when we talk to people, what we learned was that people know they're wasting food. Okay? So what? Why do I care? And the fact is, we don't have a good answer for it. Only at the most macro level do the numbers start to mean anything. And mostly they mean something to us, people in this room. But to consumers, it's simply not relevant. It's like the number of miles to the moon. So what? What do I do with that? And the fact is, we don't have very many good consumer level solutions. And we don't have much in the way of an argument to persuade them to care. And until we do that, all the technical solutions in the world aren't going to get us there. So, we saw this goal that the introductions talked about, this 50% wasted food reduction. And if I was in your business or is working on this project, I would be shaking in my boots, because I don't know how in the hell anyone expects that you're anywhere near going to be able to accomplish this with what I perceive to be a huge lack of urgency on practically everyone's part, and it's on no one's radar screen. And the notion that this is somehow going to get done by 2030, which is only, 11 plus years away, is just astonishing to me. So we saw, wow, this is a big goal. We don't see much happening at our level, and we kind of scanned around. We didn't, we know a lot of you are working real hard on this, but so I don't mean to be insulting, but we didn't see a lot happen at the macro level. We think Battle Creek has a lot of the potentials to set up a test market to start driving some visibility on this and start driving some behavioral change, because that's really at the end of the day what we want, right? So we decided we would put a proposal together to the USDA to support a Food Waste Institutions, Food Waste Solutions Institute. And what we found was that right now there's no food waste best practice test demonstration market anywhere in the country. There are places where there are individual solutions doing very well, but there is no one place where you can go and kind of see a comprehensive survey environment of all the different best practices. We thought Battle Creek has a lot of potential to be able to be that place, as I talked about. So what we said was, here's what we're going to do. And this is where Brendan comes in and really helped us put together our set of objectives that ended up being a 75-page proposal to the USDA. We wanted to become, and I'm not going to read all this because there's a lot here, but we had a very comprehensive data and research-based proposal leading to what we believed would be the opportunity to develop an understanding of best practices in food waste reduction, recovery, and Brendan has a lot of experience on the animal feeding practices, windrow composting. We wanted to get an on-site anaerobic digester and then demonstrate relative price-value relationships. We also wanted to talk about diverting, and Carl is going to talk about the potential for this with our community, which would be one of the anchor components of what we see as this larger framework of a zero-waste test market community. We also have then a food bank which already absorbs and transfers lots of food, and Mike is going to talk about that because Mike is not only the VP of beverage and food service for the casino, but he's also on the board of the food bank, and he's going to talk about that whole thing. And so we had what we believed to be was a relatively comprehensive approach to the notion of developing a zero food waste test market, which would do two things: not only develop best practice, but begin to drive visibility in a state where recycling and food waste is not on anybody's radar screen. And sometimes there's form, and sometimes there's, there's substance. And we wanted to do both, but frankly, there's a tremendous amount of form or visibility that needs to be generated in this category. It is simply not important to too many people. And until we start making it important, it's going to be hard to get anyone's attention or change behavior. Because that's what I do. I try and change behavior in my job. And I know that if it's not on anyone's radar screen, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So what the USDA said in response to our proposal was to reapply. Of course, our timing wasn't great. We submitted it right about the time of the election. And so our timing probably wasn't as good as it might have been. But they told us to reapply for this other grant. And so we're in the process of doing that. But in the meantime, a couple of other things have happened that we think will give us a couple of the anchor components to be able to successfully build the zero food waste test market in the community of Battle Creek. And so to give you a sense of what those factors are, I'm going to introduce Carl, who will, and Barb, do you want to give Carl's background?
Do you want to take any questions? Do you want to take any questions right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll take any questions if you have any for me right now.
And would you repeat the questions so that they can get it on film?
Oh, yes. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
You listed a unique vector problem. What is that? Rats?
No, what I said was that Battle Creek has a unique set of food waste vectors. And I'm not sure if that...
Your one slide had vector, vector problem.
You know, when you look at the whole, part of the problem here is there's a lot of moving parts here. So you have, you know, the vectors that I consider are manufacturers,
More on physics.
distributors, mass feeders, restaurants and hotels and so forth, and then of course you have consumers, and you also have then the solutions, which include the animal feed people and so forth. That's what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
So, okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Susan.
I was wondering, how do you make sure, as a community, you're not redoubling work that's already being done nationally or in different communities? Or also, I was thinking of some of these companies that are in Battle Creek. I think Kellogg is already what is it, 2030 Food Loss and Waste Champion. So how do you incorporate? They are working, you know, kind of on this national level, but you know, I understand there's maybe a little doubt, like what's happening, like how is this pushing along? But obviously they are signed up and they're moving along in this. So it's kind of this, you know, if you're looking at say food date labeling, how are you not redoing some work that's already being done, or also how are these companies kind of, how is this all feeding together in a synergy that's getting to something great?
You know, it's really interesting because they actually have a channel that traffics a bunch of their food waste through a company that then converts it to animal feed. So they don't think they have a food waste problem, and they donate a lot of food to the food bank. Okay, so they kind of don't think they have a food waste problem. But the fact is, nobody in town knows they do any of that. And so as a result, we have one of the largest food companies in America headquartered in a place, and they have not had one press release. They have not told anybody in our town that they are committed to reducing food waste, to eliminating food waste, to reducing, you know. I mean, it's like, hello, you guys care about this? And if so, I mean, they may be the best intended company in the world, but the fact that they have not issued any sort of documents or talked about it in our community suggests that they don't think it's important enough to let our community know what they're doing. And that's part of my frustration. You would think that this company is an $8 billion company, headquartered in a town of 50,000 people. You would think they'd let somebody know they were doing this, but they don't. And that part of my frustration with this category is it's not on anyone's radar screen. Companies that are doing it as a matter of course aren't even bragging about it. It's like, oh, we don't think it's worth telling you because you won't think it's important anyway.
Can I speak to that a little bit as well? To your question, we spent months assembling stakeholders from all of these different segments of the community, trying to understand what was happening, what were the new. We spent months assembling stakeholders and sitting with them, surveying them, spending time in their operations, and trying to get a sense for the nuances in this particular community with these players and what they were doing and what they were aware of and what unique contribution they could make or were attempting to make. And this was all part of a kind of an open-ended process for us of saying, what is the opportunity here in Battle Creek? We had some ideas about what role Battle Creek could play nationally or regionally in contributing to the new dispensation of solutions. And in that process, it just became clear this is a community where there's many assets, there is traction, but it's happening in isolation. And so the opportunity was there to assemble some of those activities, create new activities, and demonstrate in this test environment how these things how do they interface? What is a community to do who has a major manufacturer and a food bank,
and a K through 12 district, and I mean all of these things that are commonplace around the country. What's the appropriate scaled response, and how do you engage the assets that are there? And that's what Bill and his team aims to do. And it started with that kind of a process of gathering information. And with an institution like Kellogg, which you bring up, it's very difficult to get in front of the folks that are submitting those reports. That are collecting those achievements. It's a lot of that happens in isolation. It's very political, and those are variables that we're not trying to isolate and create a case study out of what's going wrong, but just to demonstrate that those are real variables and they're real challenges to any community trying to create progress.
Yes, sir. A lot of those companies I talk to the same way don't want to tell the numbers because it's a competitive disadvantage to them. They don't want their competitors to know how much waste they're putting out and going forward with that. So you may not ever find out, or they may never want that to be public.
Absolutely, and I think you're right. I think that's part of it, although they could certainly say that it's important to them and they're working on it or whatever. That's a great issue. Any other questions for me? Okay, go ahead.
Bill will be back. He'll close the session with another presentation, and so but we will take questions in between. And I'm going to introduce Carl now, the gentleman on the top there. Carl Fetters he's the city engineer and assistant director. That's two big hats. Director of Public Works for the city of Battle Creek, Michigan, with 12 years experience in local governments. In his role, he oversees a wide range of activities that include engineering, water treatment and distribution, wastewater treatment and collection, field services, fleet, and solid waste. Most recently, Carl has been tasked with developing a sustainable long-term solution to the disposal of the biosolids generated at the wastewater treatment plant. Carl has a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Michigan State University and a Master of Public Administration from Western Michigan University. So let's welcome Carl, and I'll get your presentation.
So while she cues that up, wastewater professionals in the room? All right, you guys can tune out the rest of this because it's going to be old hat to you guys. So I'm tasked with the long-term planning of what we're going to do at our wastewater treatment plant for biosolids, mostly because I'm the youngest person there. So that's my role, and I have to convince some of the old timers that some of the new technologies are ready to go. So we'll get right into it. So why are we interested in food waste recovery? Seems like an odd thing for us to get involved in. So we operate our wastewater treatment plant. It's an activated sludge plant. We also have a contract residential waste hauling that we feel is an indicator of what our community is capable of when it comes to maybe some food waste redirection. And then also we're seeing a rise in our energy costs, energy use at the wastewater treatment plant that we want to try to take advantage of. And I'm convinced that I'm part of this group mostly because we're going to spend a lot of money on some sort of solution coming up, and we want that solution to be applicable to whatever that our community needs to see. So a little bit about our solid waste program, some successes that we've had. So we have a contract with Waste Management. It's a 5-year contract. Most recently, we renegotiated and started single stream recycling. Bill may say that Michigan maybe is falling behind, but I would say that Battle Creek maybe is leading the curve in Michigan. Since we've instituted the 96-gallon tanks, we've seen a 46% increase in our recycling. That's 431 tons just in the first year, and we're seeing that increase. We also have several special collections throughout the year, and they're listed there. When we miss one or when we skip one, we hear about it. So our community is really has a mindset for these type of things. We think that our area would be apt to some sort of food waste redirection on a residential level, which would be probably down the couple steps from now. And you can kind of see this is an actual blow up of the tag that went out on the 96-gallon tanks, and you kind of see we kind of missed opportunity there with the food waste. So our activated sludge plant, kind of a activated sludge 101. We have a 27 million gallon capacity plant which is currently servicing 9 million gallons a day. We have, like Bill said, a significant food producer and several food producers. We have a dairy, so and some paper industry. So our loading is pretty significant. Our influent BOD, which is the biological oxygen demand, and that's the amount of oxygen, dissolved oxygen it takes to kind of feed our bugs that kind of work our sludge or work our process, is 650 milligrams per liter. And that's, in our area, that's about 2 or 3 times more biological oxygen demand needed than a normal activated sludge plant in our area. So it's what we think that equates to energy. We feel like it's a missed opportunity because we already have a rich stream of flow, or a rich stream of waste. And to be quite honest, I was sitting here over the last half day, and food waste really, that's my game. This is food waste starts here. I deal with the first stream of food waste. You guys are all dealing with the second stream. And we generate 7,500 dry tons of, I guess, food waste. But we call them biosolids. So just to kind of walk through our plant a little bit, and so the headworks, was this thing actually shoot a laser? No. Our headworks is on the north side of the river, comes across our dirt removal. Dirt removal removes any of the inorganics, the sands, plastics, the rags, the things that go straight to the landfill that we can't decompose through our process. From there it goes to primary clarifiers, and that's just basically a big settling tank where the most rich biosolids settle out, and that the biosolids get sent to our solids handling in the center of the plant, and the liquid stream continues on to the aeration, where we aerate it, give it chemicals, feed it, let the bugs work. And I'm oversimplifying the process, but maybe not. The bugs do their thing. They build flocks. They go into the secondary clarifiers there. Same kind of process in the secondary biosolids, not as potent. And then the liquid stream goes on to chlorination. We dechlorinate it off the river, safe and sound. Now the biosolids is my problem. And so now I have to deal with my biosolids. And in Michigan, any activated sludge plant like this has these same challenges, and I'm sure maybe across the country they have the same challenges. So what do we do with our biosolids? Well, we studied the crap out of it. 1970, 1990, 2007, and now we're in the middle of it again. There's no easy solutions. There's no cheap solutions. It's one of those things that we just kind of seems like we've kicked the can down the road a little bit. So from 1993 to November 2006, our biosolids were land applied 8 months of the year, which we feel is the most sustainable solution. And then 4 months of the year they were incinerated. When in Michigan things froze up, you can't land apply, and we don't have the storage capability on site to kind of bridge those 4 months. So some new air emission standards came out, basically killed our incinerator process. It was old anyways, so we took it out of we knew we were going to take it out of service, and so we started looking at other solutions. We started to pilot test a system that claimed that it could dewater our sludge from a 20% to a 70% by mixing it with sawdust and sending it through a centrifugal fan and creating a Class A fertilizer. The land application process that we do right now is considered a Class B fertilizer. It's applied to land or fields that have crops that aren't edible. Class A fertilizer would allow us to have a little bit more flexibility in what we do with it. Failed April 15th, and so we were left scrambling on what we were going to do because the incinerator was going out of service. We weren't going to stop that. We weren't going to upgrade that. This wasn't going to help us. And so we kind of had to take a step back, and we ended up doing the cheapest option that we feel is a 5-year solution until we can get something better in the works. This is our sludge cake loading facility. So we built a fabric building that the guys affectionately call the Stinky Twinkie. It's a truck loading facility. We put in some new pumps, new storage tank. This these improvements we feel we can repurpose with any other process that we put in place. Even if we go with an anaerobic digester, we're still going to have to load some trucks. So the way that the design was built, we feel like this is not going to be wasting money down the road. So we haven't had the luxury of landfilling, and so we've got a learning curve that we fell into. We're a 27-day or a 24-hour operation, 7 days a week, every day. The landfill operation is Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. And so we had to figure out a way to kind of bridge those. On top of that, the landfill, typically what happens is the landfill will mix our biosolids with municipal waste and then cover at the end of the day. That's their requirements. So we don't really have 8 hours to haul to them. We have a lot less time to haul to them. And so that can be a challenge, especially on Mondays when we have to haul a whole week's worth of sludge and we can't have any hiccups, and there are always hiccups. And then we also feel like in the future that some potential regulations to land application program are coming. A lot of the waste that we apply, we feel like we're responsible for that waste on these fields, and we can't always guarantee what our customers are giving us. And so land application, I think, it hasn't come under fire right now, but I think in the future it might. So what do? Or some more reasons. Costs. So we've got 14% of our annual $17 million operational budget for our plant tied up in biosolids in some way or form. Energy, trucking, landfill application. It just really isn't sustainable. These are big dollars, and energy costs are going up, trucking and landfill costs are going up, and land application costs are going up. So even more than what we normally would see in inflation and how our rates address that. So another reason that we feel like we need to kind of address this problem in the scope of a bigger view is that the City of Battle Creek 2 years ago adopted priority-based budgeting. It's fun, priority-based budgeting. But what it's done is it's asked our commission to give us results so that we can score programs. So what happens is the commission will sit down on an annual basis. They'll establish our community results, and these are oversimplified. There's a lot of information behind them. And then we're challenged with scoring our current programs and future programs according to these results and basic program attributes, which are like part of everyone. You can kind of see, I kind of circled the ones that a project that would deal with a food waste solution with our biosolids to kind of maybe generate some more energy off of our a digester. And then you can also almost circle mandated, because in Michigan right now, preventing food waste from going to landfill isn't in the picture, but I can see that possibly happening in the future. So what have we done so far? We started another master plan. We're taking a really hard look at pretty much all the options are on the table for us, including taking a really hard look at adding food waste to our waste stream. We have this triple bottom line approach that looks at the social, environmental, and financial solutions to all of our programs. We're also doing something a little bit unique in that my problem isn't unique to me. There are several activated sludge plants in our region that have the same issues. They deal with the same landfills, they deal with the same land application problems, and we feel like there's a regional approach that maybe could be handled with all of our biosolids. And what I would like to see happen is my biosolids is a pretty steady stream. It's a pretty steady stream, it's consistent, and I feel like it could be supplemented with food waste. And that's the last point there. And with that, I'll take questions.
So you didn't talk about anaerobic digestion. I mean, is that part of the master plan? Are you still in the initial stages? I mean,
It will be. It will likely be the solution. Looking ahead.
So I assume you only do aerobic digestion right now?
Yes. So we do We just do aerate, and our biosolids are either land applied or landfill. There's no energy recovery at all, which is a missed opportunity.
You must be getting quite a bit of revenue off of the 650 milligram per liter BOP from the local industries.
Yes.
And when you said you're designed for 27 but only treating 9, what you didn't say is what is your design loading? So how many pounds per day, since you're getting 650 milligram per liter, how close are we to that?
We're not close. We can handle more, so we haven't had to put or raise those fees, but we do have 4 loaders that generate a quarter of our revenue just from our industrial pre-treatment program. So we know who it's coming from, and our plant can handle it, so we don't mind.
We'll talk over a cocktail.
Any other questions?
Okay, our next presenter is Michael McFarland. Mike McFarland is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America with more than 30 years' experience in food and beverage management as executive chef and vice president of food and beverage. Okay, you guys need to get online because these guys have impressive bios.
Not really something that I'm too excited about or important about. So I'm not an academic. I'm really not a city type person or a environmental person. But what I am is a person that is very, very committed to ending hunger. So that's how kind of my whole food reclamation and food recovery fits into the Battle Creek initiative. Everything that we're going to talk about today, at least that I'm going to talk about in the presentation, is what we've done. And I think it's kind of cool that there's a lot of individuals that are coming and talking about what they want to do, what they think they can do, So it's kind of nice to be able to say this is what we've done. We've done it on a small scale, but I think there's some encouraging things that we do. So I want to give you a little background about our casino. I've got a large culinary team. There's the outside of the casino, and then the backside by I-94. You guys might have passed it going between Chicago and Detroit. We have 7 restaurants. We have Nibi, which is our fine dining restaurant. Most of them are Native American names for the restaurants because we are owned by the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi. So we are a sovereign nation, and we are on sovereign land, and we have a tribal government. So a lot of those buzzwords have been talked about earlier on through the previous presentations. We have Dacey's Tap House. This is a new restaurant and bar that we put in not too long ago. We have Mijum Buffet, where we feed about 2,200 people a day. We have Cafe 24/7, which isn't a Native American name, just means we're open 24 hours a day. Smoke and Fire is kind of our barbecue-themed restaurant that's over in the hotel. We have Chimoni's, which is, Chimoni is in a Native American culture, the woman that provided food for the tribe. And the previous Mijum just means feast in Potawatomi. And a VIP lounge for all of our high-end players. We have a team dining room. We feed between 700 and 900 team members a day. We have about 1,700 employees at the casino, team members. On average, we feed 2.5 million meals annually. And this is my executive chef team. So you've got my pastry chef, and the rest of these all are executive chefs through the rest of the outlets in the casino. We also have a full-scale bakery and cake shop. We provide all the desserts, bread, hot dog buns, sliced bread, everything for the casino. Everything is made from scratch. We're a complete scratch house. We make our stocks, our soups, everything is made in-house, which is kind of a nice thing to be able to do. Custom cakes and desserts. I can't tell you how our wedding cake business has taken off. It's very, very impressive. So I guess this whole thing with me kind of happened by chance. About 3 years ago, we were under an initiative to increase our community involvement, I guess. And they came to us and said, you should get on a board, you should do this, you should get involved in the community. There's, I think, 8 or 9 vice presidents. So I got kind of an innocuous email from a lady at the food bank, Patty Parker, who is our executive director, and she said, hey, I'm going to pinch. We're doing a fresh food initiative. Would you be interested in coming out and do a food demonstration? I said, yeah, I wasn't sure. So I waited. Something about it made me want to answer it. So I said, yep, what are you going to do? She said, we need something with carrots. We put together a healthy recipe, and we went out to the Second Baptist Church in Battle Creek. I don't know if people understand the demographic of Battle Creek, but when Kellogg came in and Post and all this, they built these housing developments called the Post Edition, and they were all these nice little cookie cutter neighborhoods for everybody to come in and have their white picket fence and everything like that. What's happened over the years is it's decayed into urban blight, basically. There is a ton of impoverished people in Battle Creek. The majority of the people in the food industry, people that are in the school systems, are at or below poverty level. They are at reduced or free lunches in all of the schools. So people don't speak to that, I think, enough to let people understand kind of what the background of the city is. So fast forward a little bit, I show up at Second Baptist, and I don't know, Baptist churches are awesome. They're super lively. There's a great group of people there. But you could also sense that there was an inherent mistrust about tasting food and about food in general. And I think a lot of that just comes down to education. So it was a cool event. I thought it was great. And then I talked to Patty afterwards, and she said, hey, what do you think about doing another one for us, maybe helping out a few in Battle Creek? I said, yeah, no problem. We can do a couple of those. So what we started to do, without my knowledge, is we started to partner with the Food Bank of South Central Michigan. And this was our Fresh Food Initiatives. So what we do is we go around to the different counties. We have 8 counties which we serve, and we do Fresh Food Initiatives. And what Fresh Food Initiatives are is the farmers and Meyer and everyone do their food reclamation, and they drop it to the food bank. The food bank then takes it to these FFIs. Well, our role in this is to come out and introduce recipes to households, which is palatable for the family to eat. So if you got a big truckload of kale, how are you going to make kale taste good for kids to eat or families to eat, right? And that is a challenge. And let's face it, if we're doing all this food reclamation and this food repurposing, what good does it do if we have all this fresh food that sits in the fridge and it goes bad because people don't know how to cook it? They don't know how to peel a rutabaga. They don't know how to fabricate kohlrabi. They don't even know what kohlrabi is. And then you get into your root vegetable seasons and things like that. So we have since expanded the operation into all 8 counties. We now have between 35 and 60 that we do a month. And we do this all on, our chefs all volunteer for this. So this is a zero sum. I have to get a little technical paper over here, sorry. I'm not like a great public speaker person, so sorry. Through our fresh events and our FFIs currently, we have served over 106,566 people in 3 years. And what that has done for us is given us an opportunity to gain trust in the community. We go out to the South Kalamazoo projects. We go out to Hillsdale. We go up north to Hastings. The majority of the places we go are obviously very, very poverty-stricken. And the whole idea is to build trust in the community from our standpoint and to get people to understand the importance of eating nutritional food and how to keep the education going generation to generation with why we want to know where our food comes from. Like I said, the 8 counties we serve: Berry County, Branch County, Calhoun, Hillsdale, Jackson, Kalamazoo, Lenawee, and St. Joe's. It's a huge area. And I can tell you, when you got to get up in the morning and go from 3 to 7, and it's about 20 below zero in Hillsdale, and you're out there, doing a hot soup, it's cold, but I tell you, by the time you're done doing it, it's amazing, amazing experience. Like I said, that's how many people that we've impacted since we've done this program. We do a lot of food safety training now, and I'm going to get to the Fire Hub a little bit later in the presentation here, but what we like to do is, I know refrigerators seem to be a hot topic today with some of our speakers. We approach it from a little different, objective. We want people to look at the refrigerator and understand where and why things go. Why you don't put things on top of the refrigerator because of the heat, why you don't put vegetables in a certain area because they release gases, why you put things at eye level. It's kind of like marketing and retail. So we will actually go through a mock refrigerator with all of our different counties and communities and explain to people how you can mitigate loss in your fridge just by setting it up efficiently and, how things should be served. We do a lot of cooking classes as well. That's Randy Nash. He's one of the sous chefs. We go and partner up with MSUE, and we will teach special needs adult programs on how to be more self-sufficient with cooking. So we'll go in and do hands-on cooking classes. I think we've done about 25 of these between the 8 counties. And again, all of this was done with volunteer labor from my staff. This didn't cost the casino any money. This didn't cost the food bank any money. It didn't cost anything. Well, what it cost was a commitment to the community. And I think the majority of my presentation is focused on education, return on community, and I guess commitment. From my perspective, working at a casino where I know we're extremely profitable, we're not focused on money. We're not focused on any of these products or programs yielding money to the casino. We, meaning personally me and my team and the rest of the food and beverage department, are committed to ending hunger as quickly as possibly as we can in the areas. And this is somewhat of a vehicle for that. We also implemented a food rescue program. I like to call it food reclamation. So the food that comes off of the buffet, and not comes off the buffet, the food before it goes to the buffet, if we've over prepped, or numbers are dropped down, we have a snowstorm, or if there's banquets, then it has a lower count that comes in, we then reclaim that food. We take it and we blast chill it. Takes us about 90 minutes to bring it down under 41 degrees. We then take it to a clean room. We then repack it in 2 to 4 pound containers. We label those. We put a blanket allergen statement on them. We've got reheating instructions. We just do it all the way up to 165 to take care of everything. And just put a little moniker on there, enjoy or toss by 5/117. Following guidelines, we've got 4 months that we can freeze the food. And this has been a very, very successful addition to what the food bank delivers. So we've been doing this, I think we've been doing this about 2 years. And we figured out we've roughly reclaimed, repackaged, and donated 30 tons of food, which is about 60,000 pounds, which is a fairly, I don't know how that would do in the food bank or whatever the food something challenge that you guys have. It's probably not a bad number. Yeah, it's probably not terrible. So yeah, the whole process, reclamation, blast chilling, repacking. Just this year we've done 3,856 pounds. The next thing, which probably, I don't know if it should have cost me my job or maybe elevated me to a different standard in some people's minds, but I used to, well I still do, drive past a fire station on the way to work through Battle Creek, and it is in a old industrial area. I guess back in the day the fire stations were put up by different companies that were more liable to get fires. They funded them, Kellogg's, Post. This fire station, number 4, was by a big textile and lumber factory. So I drive by it. It's this old brick cool building. I think it'd be great to put a restaurant in there. And so the longer we started talking with the food bank and the struggles with nonprofits, we thought, how could we create an entity that could drive profit that would then be repurposed into donations to nonprofits? So think of it as a nonprofit profit restaurant, if you can wrap your head around that. I'm not really down with 501c3s. I think there's too much regulations, and nothing against the regulated people in here, but I'm really more of an action individual, and again, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really bad. This was almost really bad. So, like I said, nonprofit restaurant. This is back circa a long time ago. It used to be a horse-drawn fire station. So, kind of a cool factoid is the horses lined up in there, and there were 4 fire stations, and they ran a little telegraph in that portico. And the horses knew what station just by the different chimes that came through. And if it was number 4, they'd back right up into their things and they were off to go. We wanted a historic building because with everything going on and being torn down in Battle Creek, we wanted something that we could repurpose and something that was a historic landmark. We wanted something located in downtown Battle Creek because this is where our most impoverished clients are. Again, that's the number 4 fire station as it was. Another view. This is... So I go into the tribal council meeting and I have this big PowerPoint presentation, not like this, and I ask them, I'd like to invest $1.1 million in this fire station. I can't pay any of the money back, and if it makes money, you don't get any of the profits. Recipe for success. So there literally wasn't one person in the room that did not agree with the proposal because it was such a community-driven initiative. It was really sweet. if you want to check it out, it's thefirehubbc.com. Anyway, so like any historic building, we had a budget of this, and we went in, and there was, of course, it was in an industrial area, so all the soil was totally screwed. The abatement with the asbestos, the lead, everything except the brick had to come out of the building. We had to truck soil off. We had to do all this other stuff. So I'm not even allowed to say how much the building cost. It didn't cost me my job though, which is kind of cool. So this is it now. It's called the Fire Hub, and the cool part of the Fire Hub is we wanted to have a for-profit, non-profit restaurant in front, which is this area up here, and then in the back we wanted to have our own pantry, our own food pantry, where we could kind of work with the food bank as a partner, but then we could do things a little bit differently. Like we really wanted to change the experience you had when you came into a food bank. There's not a lot of dignity when you line up to get free food. You know, people are down on their luck. It's a bad experience. So we really wanted to try and improve that experience. This is the inside of the restaurant, all poured floors. We do pizzas. We do a full retail bakery. We've got sandwiches. We do a lot of pop-up dinners in here. This is also where we teach a lot of our food safety classes for the neighborhood. We're going to do a really cool event in Halloween. We're going to bring all the community down, and we're going to have each door is going to be a different door to go through. But we wanted it to be a hub for the community with different aspects coming off of that hub. We wanted a shared entrance. We wanted one entrance for people that are coming in to buy the retail food and another entrance for people that are coming in to use the pantry, because I thought it was important for a couple different reasons. And I'll leave your imagination to figure that one out. The Kendall Street Pantry, it's on Kendall Street, not that imaginative. We partnered up with the Food Bank of South Central Michigan, which I'm a board of director on. And we use a unique system called Pantry Track. So we have a little, like a little grocery tag that we print off for all of our customers. They come back, it's got their information on it. What that does is it gives us the ability to reach out and let people know if we're having special distributions, if we're going to do any educational seminars. It isn't like Big Brother tracking or anything. It's really to help our customers and understand a little more about them. If they had allergies, we can put it in there. If they're special needs kids or things like that, we can all put that information in there. When they come in, they swipe it. It comes up on our Chromebooks, and it helps with that. Right now, we're currently open 1 day a week. It's set up more of a shopping experience. So we do about 3 families at a time, and we have little shopping carts they go through and pick the food out. And I think a lot of our customers have talked about how it's nice to be able to get condiments and pet food and things like that. We are available for emergency distributions. I had the manager call me at home at early saying there's a family in the parking lot, 8 people crammed into a car. Can we do something for them? Yeah, well, I drove down. We put together boxes for them. And we can do that because we aren't a food bank. Now, we got all our food from the food bank, so we're cool on the regulation end. But we can operate, I won't say with impunity, but almost, which is nice. So far to date, we've served 1,052 households. We estimated we try and do 45 to 50 per day. The last 2 that we've done were over 100, which is really, really starting to push the limits of how many people we can get in and out of there. So we know we're going to have to open another day, which is okay. Again, this is just another picture of that. We take our leftover food that we've repurposed from the previous slide with the reclamation, and we take that to the hub. And then anything it goes to the food bank first from a regulatory standpoint, and then they allocate X amount to us, and then the rest goes out to all the other counties. We also have a teaching garden that we are putting in that is going to help. Like I said, education is a very important part of what this whole mission is here. So the importance of children and the volunteers, which will hopefully be adults in the area, we want to convey the importance of knowing where your food comes from, the value of your food, what fresh produce tastes like, and basically get people involved in what's going on in the community. And a lot of it has to do with food. We use food as a vehicle. That's something that, at least I think I'm somewhat decent at. We've already checked with the board of director or the superintendent at Battle Creek Community Schools. We're good on that. We're going to work on the balanced nutrition program, where the food comes from. We do have one little technical thing. We're putting in a SOMAT. It's got a waste reduction. It's a large system in the casino that's actually going to reduce our solids into the waste stream by about 85%. It ends up being this nice little pulp product. They take it off to parts unknown and use it for some sort of a biofuel. But funny that we see these inverted pyramids and everything like that, and this is something that we kind of, how we rank our food reclamation or waste. Waste and landfill, pretty easy. Animal feed, I don't know, a little bit harder. Composting, maybe a little bit harder. But reserving is the hardest, in our opinion. We haven't gotten to the next inverted pyramid top. But I feel good that we started more on the reserving end of it instead of going for a lot of the stuff that other people have done. This hasn't even really been announced yet, but we are going to be putting in a large garden on tribal property, on organic land. And we're going to be growing produce for the tribal members. And we're also going to be growing produce for the Battle Creek community schools and the teachers. We're going to put in salad bars for the teachers and the students at no cost, not only to provide a nutritious aspect to their lunch, but hopefully to reduce the amount of waste that's coming out of the school lunches. We looked at trying to do the Jamie Oliver and tackle school lunches, but it's really a daunting task, so we thought this would be, I guess, the path of least resistance for us to go after. So we should be announcing that probably in 3 weeks after we break from the meeting, the council meeting, and I expect that we've got 5 acres allocated. We've also got another 87 acres if this thing ever takes off. So I think we're beginning to scratch the surface of what we can do as a casino, and all the little things that we do in here are non-proprietary. Anybody can do them. It doesn't cost a ton of money. You don't have to completely wreck your life getting a fire station like I did. But there's a lot of things that you can do in here that I think will help, whether it's an independent restaurant, get people past the fact that you're not going to get sued if you are safely reclaiming food. It's just not going to happen. People aren't going to go after you. If you're giving food to somebody that isn't safe, then you shouldn't be giving food to anybody. I mean, food safety is absolutely at the pinnacle of food reclamation and what we're trying to do here. So if you're not following, the Good Samaritan law, and you're not with good conscience giving good food out, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So that's just me. It's I don't have a biodigester or anything like that. This is kind of what we've done in Battle Creek. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them right now. Yes, sir.
A lot of the case studies you offer look like things that would take foundation is funding in other communities.
Yep.
I'm just curious as to what level of awareness they have of the things you're doing.
100%. We actually met with 2 of the senior directors at WKKF, and they are looking to, and it kind of plays to what Bill and Carl have talked about. They're looking to take all of these entities in Battle Creek and strip them down into a 3 or 4 person task force and assess all these different fragmented nonprofits as best how we can deploy them in order. All the nonprofits should be a cohesive unit, or a lot of these foundations that we have, but they're not. They're doing a lot of businesses that are perpetuated to the life of the grant, and then they just die. So WKKF wants to go in and, like, we went to them and said, hey, you know what, we're doing this. We really don't care if you want to kick money into it. We're going to do it with or without you. We're just offering you the opportunity to be a part of it. And I think they are going to partner up with us on the gardens. And I think they are going to partner up with us on a couple other initiatives that we have out in Albion, which is another area that we're looking at, which is still in Calhoun County. So, yeah, but you know what? My frustration with this whole thing is I don't want to get tied up for 2-3 years dealing with foundations and grants and all that stuff, because I don't have to. A lot of people do. I don't. I can go back to the tribe, and hopefully they're going to give me the money that I need, and then whatever I can't make up in that, I'm going to go and get with volunteer. And so it's just, I'm not saying it's a blueprint for everybody, but WKKF has been very, very good as far as the resource goes. Unfortunately, a lot of their grant dollars do not stay in Battle Creek anymore.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking that some of the things you're working on seems like good knowledge we can share with other projects.
Absolutely, and like I said, what we would love for like, we're working the Pokagon Band down in New Buffalo casino there. We're also looking at working with Gun Lake and then possibly Soaring Eagle about different parts of this, whether it's a food pantry or whether it's how to set up your food reclamation and things like that. So it isn't anything that they can't do. It isn't anything that a restaurant can't do.
Another question after.
Sure.
Do you have suggestions on how to get a casino started, engaged with food rescue? We have a large one in town who has not been on board?
You know, it's hard, and you know, we sit there with the food bank, and we do annual meetings, and we go and we sit with Feeding America and everything, and our executive director just sticks it to them all the time, because most of them do have casinos. You have to find, I guess, someone in there that has enough passion and dedication and community awareness that wants to make a difference, because it's a lot of work. And if you're looking at it for like gratitude or something to put on your resume, it's probably not the best reason to do it. But when you get 200 or 300 kids that come through there and they're trying stuff like mashed potatoes with kale, or they're trying root vegetables that the parents won't even try, that's the stuff you go home with and you're like, man, we made a little bit of an impact today. I guess you try and find somebody in the upper echelon, maybe somebody in their marketing department or public relations that you can use this. I mean, you can go on to Firekeepers, you can Google and kind of see some of the chronology behind how we did this and all the different steps. And, you know, I'm not above shaming people into helping with things, because sometimes you have to.
I'll
I'm not, I mean,
at them and tweet, like,
well, yeah,
add you into it.
yeah, because I mean, people just have to begin to think out of the norm. They can't just say, oh, we can't do it. You know, we're dealing with a college right now that doesn't want to let us reclaim food. We're like, you don't have to do anything. We'll come in, we'll pack it, we'll chill it. You don't have to do. No, we can't do that. Yeah, you can. So we went and talked to the president of the university, and I think we're going to be able to get this group to let us come in and reclaim their food. Why wouldn't you? You know, it just takes one individual or group that's got a little bit of a vision, and you know what, play to their strong suit. You know, hey, to look great for the community. You know, you always need to improve your community image. I mean, there's multiple ways you can position it with a casino, because at the end of the day, they need to have a good community image. So you just need to figure out how to work that in your favor.
We'll keep working on it.
All good? One last question?
Yeah, you mentioned dignity, so I think you kind of already touched the language a little bit. I'm curious, being that the audiences you're likely working with, if cultural sensitivity and any type of trainings like that came into play with your staff at all.
Absolutely. You have to understand that someone that doesn't know how to read isn't going to tell you that they don't know how to read. They're going to be extremely embarrassed about it. People that don't know how to cook, or people that don't know how to do certain things, are not going to be your most forthright person to come out and talk about it. So when we went into a lot of culturally sensitive areas, we had to be culturally sensitive. And the good thing is that coming from a tribal casino and understanding what the core values and the grandfather teachings are, at least from our casino, we're very, very invested in universal culture, I guess sensitivity, for lack of a better word. So you know that you're going into the projects in Kalamazoo, and that you have to know. I mean, we're literally in there serving food, and a young officer came in and said, hey, I'm officer. So we have 200 people in this gym, and an officer came in and was like, hey, you know, I'm new here, I want to do this and, you know, help you guys out. And they lit him up like you couldn't believe. We've been robbed. I mean, they just blasted the guy, because, you know, they've been fed so many different false promises and all this is going to happen. So what we did is just went in for 2 years and ground and ground and ground, until now we have groups coming in saying they did their own chop competition in the projects, that's awesome. I mean, to me, to watch these ladies and guys say, oh yeah, you know, I did this and that and the other thing with the recipes, and I brought a couple recipes in and the formats. To me, that's priceless. You've broken down a lot of different barriers culturally, and to me, that's awesome. So that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
If only each of our communities would have such a champion. I mean, that is what it takes. So, Mike, thanks for your work. That is awesome. This session does go till 5, and then there's a social hour right afterwards. And I see some of you may be looking at your app, and before it ends, I just wanted to remind you that you can rank or rate this session on the app, and they would like us to do that. So if you just go to the app, go to this session, scroll to the bottom, and give your evaluation rating, that'd be great. So Bill is going to close it for us, and I will get your presentation.
It's good that I have a history of not doing content light presentations, and I'm glad to see that Mike and Carl, you know, are in the same scenario. So what I want to do is talk with you for the remaining minutes about the marketing aspect of food waste. As a marketing guy, of course, everybody in their own discipline kind of thinks about it from their perspective. But I want to give you the perspective of my job from a marketing standpoint is behavior change. That's what I'm mostly interested in. I left Kellogg's 30 years ago because I wanted to work with nonprofits and help them understand how to get people to change their behavior, which is a large portion of what many nonprofits are really interested in doing. Unfortunately, many nonprofits also don't realize that the whole marketing and, you know, communication component parts of what they're trying to do is very fundamental to achieving that behavior change. So it used to be back in the day that we had various kinds of encouragement to change your behavior, such as if you didn't, they would burn you at the stake or shoot you or what have you. And we see that kind of in parts of the world today where ISIS is sort of enforcing the way they want you to behave by essentially, you know, killing you if you don't behave the way they want. Well, that's the way the whole world used to work. But the fact is that actually we used to get people to change through some very civilized ways. There was a campaign back in Greece to free slaves. There have been communication campaigns throughout history to get people to change their behavior. I'm just reading Hamilton's biography, and if you read it, what you realize that he wrote, and actually everybody kind of thinks Madison did the bulk of the Federalist Papers, but the fact is Hamilton did. Hamilton wrote 51 of the 85 essays, and he did that because as a member of the Constitutional Convention from New York, he was trying to persuade New Yorkers to agree to adopt the Constitution. So there have been communication campaigns to change people's behavior, to change their attitudes throughout history. But we've never really acknowledged that nonprofit organizations have a responsibility to persuade people to behave differently. And that's really what I'm very interested in. I think it's a fascinating notion. And what I want to do is spend the remainder of the time with you talking about some case studies and giving you some principles that could be applied to the notion of food waste and food reclamation. So typically, the differences from commercial marketing, which I used to be in, to social marketing has to do with the notion of it's conceptual, it's behavior or values-based. You try to leverage social norms, and you're often seeking a permanent change in behavior, but you have to do it within the culture that exists, and you often have to reconcile the difference between values and wants. So some people may want to quit smoking, but they can't because of the value, either the addictive value of smoking or the habit that has been created. So here's an example of, kind of a smoking message. And one of the things we've learned is how we have to address what's important to people. We have to go against their values and apply social norms, which is that children are important in our society. So we look at those kinds of cues. But the fact is, we do use a lot of the same tools that you use in traditional marketing. So, and once something is important to you, you can apply it in all kinds of ways. And I just love this little text thing. And it demonstrates that it can be applied at all levels. So even a church message board can start to influence your behavior. And one of the things that I'm concerned about regarding the whole notion of food waste is no one at any level is talking about this anywhere. And if we're going to get where we need to go in 12 years, we got to start getting people to talk about it. It's got to start to be on people's radar screen. And, you know, just in the past few years, we've seen how the notion of texting while driving has become a pretty visible issue. And that's what we need from a food waste standpoint. So that means we've got to get people who care about this and authorities to begin to start investing. One of the things that I'm concerned about is when I look at social change, behavioral change, these are the component parts that you frequently look at. And the problem from a food waste standpoint is a lot of these are missing. We don't have general discontent. We don't have general consensus on the cause because, frankly, food waste comes from pretty much every component part of the waste of the stream. The potential for social action to have an impact is legitimate, but it's not on the nightly news. And there's not a lot of responsiveness by those in power. So that's one of the reasons why I'm concerned, is because when I look at the criteria for what constitutes the ability to see a societal change, we're missing some of the pieces. In marketing, this is what we tend to operate on the basis of AIDA. Attention, interest, decision, and action. I have to get your attention. Once I get your attention, I can build your interest. I can then get you to make a decision, and then you can then take an action. Until we apply these principles to food waste, you can have all the technical solutions and the anaerobic digesters in the world, and we're not going to get where we need to go. So we've got to start focusing on this component. And if you have a food waste initiative in your community, I want to emphasize how important the marketing component is going to be. Even when you apply mass media, it doesn't always work. There's audience resistance. There's the issue of the benefit. It may not be applied properly. And I'll tell you the two biggest reasons are people underestimate how much it costs to penetrate the market with communication messages. They always underestimate. When I was at Kellogg's, and this is a number of years ago, Bill Lamoth, the CEO, we spent over $400 million a year on advertising. And we don't do it because we want to. And it won't take any less money to begin to influence social change in any other environment. These campaigns tend to fail because some people don't want to know. You have to have a fundamental interest in the issue, and it has to work with your already existing attitudes. In many cases, from a food waste standpoint, we're starting at ground zero. People have very little understanding or awareness. They don't know why they should care. And it doesn't necessarily, the recommendations we're going to have don't necessarily work with their existing attitudes. Change is very difficult, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of expertise, and it takes a lot of money. You have to have collaborations. One of the reasons we're high on the notion of a zero food waste test market is we want to build, along with the technical solutions, we want to build the collaborations, which right now largely don't exist anywhere. We've seen where, you know, you made the point about the Kellogg Foundation. They're operating in a silo. The Kellogg Company is operating in a silo, and they're a block apart from each other. I mean, it's astonishing how people don't talk.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily say either one was originally operating silos, just to be fair to the Kellogg Foundation.
Duly noted.
But they do a lot of good work.
No argument. Social agencies can't do it alone. Government can't do it alone. You have to invoke private industry, get people who have money and wherewithal to accomplish things, to care. And a perfect example is Mike McFarland and Firekeepers Casino. What they're doing is wonderful. And they're doing things that government can't or won't do. And we've got to bring those kind of partners in. We've got to have collaborations. We've got to have everybody in the boat. We've got to get people to see this as a crusade and make it a popular cause. And only after that can we allow it to sort of drift back down into the managerial level. It's got to be something that people care about. And that's what good crusades and good social media campaigns do. I want to give you a sense of how complicated this can be. Essentially, in my world, we break things up into 4 different cells. And the notion is, when you have an initiative where the cost is low and the action clearly benefits the individual, it's not very hard to get people to comply. So my example here is to persuade men to be examined for colon cancer. Okay? That's a pretty easy sell. Recycling programs. The cost is low and the action benefits society. The action doesn't benefit the individual, so this is harder. Okay. Smoking cessation is at the next level. That's really difficult because the cost is very high. If you're addicted to smoking, trying to quit is very, very difficult. And the action may benefit you, but it doesn't benefit you in the short run. You only find out if you have cancer 20 years later. Right? And the last, the most difficult kind of method is, in my example here, the notion of reducing chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere, which was creating an ozone hole in the atmosphere. And so the problem is, for the companies, the cost of moving away from these CFCs was high, and there was no benefit to the company at all. It theoretically benefited society in the long run. So when you look at a change initiative, I'd like you to kind of think about putting food waste on this map, and where would you put it? You know? The cost is theoretically not terribly high, although it is going to require some behavior change. But there's frankly very little benefit right now because food is so cheap. People throw it away all the time and have already factored that into their lifestyle. So it's probably not a cell A. It may be a cell B. It's probably a cell C because it's making me change differently, and I don't see much personal benefit.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I don't want to get you off
That's
where
okay.
you're headed, but you know, when I think about CFCs, you know, it's regulation. You know that.
It wasn't. I can tell you it wasn't regulation.
Okay.
Dow Chemical, which had the market share, because I did a case study on this. Dow, which had the major market share, took the initiative to pull them off the market themselves. And the other competitors agreed to do it, as long as Dow did. So it was not regulation. Dow became socially responsible and removed the CFCs, and because they were the ones that had the most to lose, and they were the ones that did it. And it essentially then set the new standard, which then the government imposed the regulation and said now everyone must use this revised formula. And so regulation does play a role, absolutely. But in this particular case, Dow took the initiative.
Awesome to know that. I didn't realize. How do you think, though, that impacts where you're at in Michigan or in the country with food waste? I mean, is there anything in the grant that you're writing that would work on the policy level with lawmakers and looking at legislation?
I think a lot, well, frankly, I think the notion, we have to start sensitizing people to the cost of food waste from a societal standpoint, which is filling landfills and creating methane gas. Right now, people aren't aware of that. No one knows that. No one has a clue that that 40% of landfill is food, and that's creating huge methane gas, which is environmentally very toxic. So, in my sense is we have to do that, and we have to start charging people to throw food away. I think we've got to start assessing that. And I don't know if we do it through the waste management stream, the garbage collection, or from the landfill costs, but we have to start applying a personal cost to throwing food away. Yes?
Have like 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, we're going to go fast. And I want to share with you a couple of principles that I feel may be relevant for food waste. First of all, big change can occur if you're willing to spend the money. Does anybody know what happened September 3rd, 1967 in Sweden?
Drove on the other side.
Sorry?
Changed the way the side they drove on the road. Tell us.
I think we got it. I was just trying to make sure I understood what you said. Sweden shifted from driving on the left side of the road to the right side of the road. All 8 million adult Swedes changed at the very same time. This is not the sort of change you would phase in. And they did it by essentially overwhelming the country with messaging. And they were successful. There was not one head-on collision or major traffic accident as a result of that shift. But it took them almost a year with these messages to build people to be prepared for that change. That is such a fundamental change in the way people behave. And you know, we think people can't make those changes, but they can. They can make changes as big as this if you prepare them for it and motivate them to do it. So that's a huge change. I want to give you a very quick case study. This is a project I worked on a number of years ago, and it has to do with teen drinking. It was clearly identified as a major problem in this county. Binge drinking was a huge issue. And so a community came together and decided to eliminate underage drinking in this county. And their strategy was, and this is a meaningful principle for food waste, to identify your target influencers or adopters. Who are the most critical people that you need to reach? In this case, we decided to go after parents and influencers because going after kids didn't work. You can tell kids all day long they shouldn't drink, but they're going to. So what we did was we went after the influencers and the parents. And we built an entire communication structure and mechanisms around how parents could help kids be persuaded not to drink. The other thing is I want to show you the collaborative partners that we pulled together, which I think is going to be critical in food waste. We have got to get everybody in the boat. This is not, one organization's not going to do this. And one organization was not going to stop teen drinking. But when you had everybody in the boat, it had a huge influence in the community. It started to change the culture. And so as a result, we got the resources, we got the ability to be able to influence kids by having enough of the tools available. This is the advisory committee. We had everybody. We had law enforcement, we had the beverage industry, we had the beer distributors. We had everyone involved in working to not have kids drink. And it was a remarkably successful, comprehensive program. These are the factors that influence adopters. And when you go into something like this, like food waste, I think about the way in which we're going to motivate people to participate, to be helped, like some of the things that Mike is doing, which was going to require a huge amount of collaboration, messaging, and understanding what we're trying to do. We spent a lot of money on this particular project. And the thing is, I want you to understand that to get people to stop wasting food is not going to be cheap. It's going to cost a ton of money. And the sooner people start to recognize that, the sooner we'll be able to make progress. I want to share another principle with you, and that is social norms. Social norms are extremely powerful, and we can moderate people's behavior on the basis of that. The example that I want to give you has to do with binge drinking at the college level. Students, what we learned from the research was that students regularly overestimate the extent to which peers believe their peers are binge drinking. And as a result, they were more likely to binge drink. So what we found is that by building a comprehensive program that targeted one specific message, and that is that most college students are not binge drinking. And then we layered that universally to the entire population by going to selective members of group at highest risk, read fraternities and sororities, and then going to individuals who have had that kind of problem in the past. We were able to lock on to the problem with a very focused message and result in reduced college-level binge drinking. I want to share one other principle for you, the notion of positive deviancy. This is an important principle in social marketing. In this particular case, there's a high level of childhood malnutrition in Vietnam. Typically, the solution was artificial outside NGOs coming in and providing feeding support. But the fact is, there were very few poor families that had healthy children that were inconsistent with the trend. And so what they did was they went and researched that, and they found that those families that were healthy were collecting tiny shrimps and crabs, engaging in these sweet potato greens, and feeding their infants 3 to 4 times a day. But the reason most people didn't do it was because it was seen as culturally inappropriate for infants. And so the solution was taking this notion of positive deviancy and transforming it into a social norm. They taught mothers how valuable it could be for them to acquire these products, show them how to prepare it, like Mike talks about, and observing how their children were healthier. So a principle I want you to keep in mind is positive deviancy and how in food waste we can look for examples of the outliers and then transform those into the norm. One other example I want to share with you is the use of iodized salt in Pakistan. The health issues from the lack of iodine in the diet result in a huge number of health issues in places where they don't have adequate supplies of iodine. The strategy was to develop a consumer demand for iodized salt. The solution was they taught manufacturers how to create iodized salt. They showed them how to distribute it, and then they came up with a marketing package. They basically branded iodized salt with a logo that was the hand and pot. They showed you a salt pot and the hand tossing in the salt. The result was that consumer demand for iodized salt and the brand of hand and pot logo was exploded, and families were taught by the children that you have to have the hand and pot logo on your salt in order to put salt in your food to be appropriate. And what they did was, this was so cool, they put in a purple dye in the salt. And so when the salt was exposed to any moisture, it turned purple. And that told you that you had iodized salt. So you knew you had the right stuff because it turned purple. And so kids would say, when their parents were cooking, they would say, "Is it turning purple?" And that would tell them that they had iodized salt. So it was a marvelously successful behavior change in the world of iodized salt. And I've got another example of rice, but it's the same kind of thing. So one last one is commercial sex. It's always kind of an interesting study. And the notion is, how do we prevent AIDS within the commercial sex trade? And this was a study done in Bombay. And the solution was to persuade those engaging in sex to use condoms. What's very interesting here is that they understood who the key adopters were, which were the sex workers. So they used female social workers, which was very important because they had a comfortable relation. They were able to build a comfortable relationship with the sex workers, and they provided education, provided free condoms, and they taught condom negotiating skills, which would enable them to persuade their clients to use condoms. Then they also had a separate target for male clients. And so, and then, of course, they, from an industry standpoint, they made sure that condoms were easily and readily available. So behavior change can be affected by making sure you have these component parts in place, the product, the message, the target adopters, and then helping them work through where they're trying to go. To sum up, you know, in my world, in trying to get people to change their behavior, we have to get people to care. We have to recognize that until they do care, they're not going to change their behavior. Modest personal benefit and goal achievement requires everybody to be in the boat. There's often a personal cost that we have to take into consideration. If the benefit and the cost ratio is out of balance, we have to balance it, which means we have to, the cost won't go down, but the benefit has to come up. So we have to persuade people that the cost of saving food and reusing it is worth, there's a benefit attached to it, and it may be the personal benefit, the personal feeling good that comes from using food properly or getting the highest utility out of it. So that's the notion that when we're trying to change behavior in the area of food waste, we look at objectives, message, funding, target adopter groups, legislation, helpful incentives, and maybe we need a food waste czar to help manage all of this. I'm sorry, we probably ran over a few minutes, I apologize, but certainly we'll take any questions for any of us in the remaining non-time that exists.
Questions?
Okay. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Remember, there's a social time.